Perfect.
Sorry.
So I can introduce myself. My name is Carrie Baldwin, and my title is a professional learning and outreach manager, which basically means I train educators and then reach out and try to get more educators interested in trying out our curricula. And what I'd love for you to do, if you're willing and able, since we have a smaller group, is if you're willing to share in the chat just where you're located. So I know there's like folks from different states represented, and just what kind of program you teach in or you support. That will be super helpful information to make sure that we can tailor this to what you're interested in. Yes, as was said, I've been at the museum for about a year, a little over a year. And before that, I worked at a couple different places. I was a middle school and high school science teacher for 10 years here in Boston, at a couple different schools. And I also spent some time for an organization, AmeriCorps organization, that's dear to my heart, called City Year. And so I worked for 10 years as an instructional coach for that program. So I worked with a group of other former teachers, and we trained the tutors, who are all 18 to 25, how to go into classrooms, how to work with third graders through 10th graders in math and literacy and other things. Yeah, that was an amazing experience. I was also a core member at AmeriCorps when I first got out of college. So I did that in another AmeriCorps program called Citizen Schools, which does out-of-school time programming, after-school programming. So the out-of-school time space, the after-school space is definitely something that I love to be in and be a part of. All right. So thank you for putting that in there. Yeah, so let's talk about a couple of things. Sorry, I'm trying to get this to advance. There we go. So I can talk a little bit about just some introductory stuff, just like, what is YES? So YES stands for Youth Engineering Solutions. And we're part of the Museum of Science. And so that's the symbol on the left-hand side. That's the Museum of Science here in Boston. And some folks have heard of EIE in the past, and that stands for Engineering as Elementary. And that's a program that's been around for about 20 some years. It was one of the first engineering programs for elementary school students. And it's got a whole bunch of different units for elementary school, in school, everywhere, everything from, preschool through 8th grade for both in school and out of school time. There are about 70 to 80 units that have been developed over the last 20 years. It's a fantastic program. And basically joined together some of the same people, especially Christine Cunningham here at the museum, started YES a couple years ago after they had left the museum, then came back to the museum, and now it's all under one umbrella. So if you've heard of EIE at any point, it's the same thing as YES. That's just sort of the new name we're under. The thing that's great about the YES curricula is it's taken a lot of the feedback from EIE from the past 20 years and really tried to incorporate that into the materials. And so we're trying to bring the best units from the past into this format as well, because our out-of-school time folks and teachers are really excited about what they're seeing. And the biggest change is that it is free. And I'll talk more about that, but it's a free curricula in terms of downloading it. And we'll talk more about what's in there, but that's the most important thing to know. And that's a big change. All right. So our goal is that we're going to look a little bit at engineering practices, talk about how they can be modeled for youth, talk about the importance of an engineering identity and the benefits that can bring for students, talk about the engineer design process and how hands-on activities boost engagement, which I'm sure you're very familiar with, and then just to make sure that sort of what we have to offer and what you can access for free, what all the different options are. I know that folks are in different settings, so you may not be in a place where you can keep your video on. If I was at my house right now, that would probably be the case. But if you're able to put your video on, that's awesome. Love for you to respond verbally. We're going to have some questions, especially for a smaller group. Please mute yourself if you're not responding verbally. Ignore the Google Slides. We are not going to be using Google Slides. We're going to try to use the whiteboard today. But yeah, definitely use the chat. We're here and we want to answer questions and then do that. So we want to make sure this feels as interactive as it can be in a virtual place. Okay, so let me see if I can access our chat as well. Okay, see Kim in there. Excellent. All right, so we have New Jersey. Excellent. Chicago, Vermont. Awesome. So it's a good range. I love this. But yes, definitely use the chat if you have questions. You want to make sure you feel like not even just questions, but you know, what you're getting, what you need. All right. So I'm going to see if I can do this. We're going to give this a shot, Katie. We'll see. All right. Let's see if we can go. I'm going to stop the share. I'll take it back. We'll see if we can use the whiteboard. So let's try this. As I was telling Katie, I'm a little rusty in terms of it's been a while since I've done my Zoom. Okay, let's go in here. Just all right. So if you are able to, I'll see if I can, I don't know if I can share this actually. So there, if you go to the, let's see, if you go to the whiteboard, I see some folks are in there. If you're able to click on, yeah, I think Katie right now, no one's seeing the whiteboard, right? But you can click on it. Oh, let's see.
I can see the whiteboard that you're sharing.
Okay, so I'm still sharing. Okay.
I can click on
Let's
it.
see. You can click on it? Okay,
Yep.
cool. All right. Well, look at us.
Oh,
All
look at
right, thank
that.
you. Like I said, a little rusty. The Google Slides
so
did not work
cool.
late last night. Excellent. Well, if you would all be willing to, I guess, engage, I'd love to know. See, as it is Teacher Appreciation Week, and we all need to appreciate ourselves as well. So Educator Appreciation Week. I'd love you to just grab one of the, if you're able to, grab one of the sticky notes or a shape, whatever you feel like, and just share, if you're willing to share something you're proud of as an educator, because we all do things that we should be really proud of or hope that we're proud of. So take a minute. Let's give ourselves some love. I think you can extend them. I think you can do all kinds of things. So I see making STEM approachable for all. Youth getting excited about what you're teaching, sharing your excitement. Yes, teens. Oh yeah, feel free to format. Excellent, thank you. I'm proud to see my students using the skills they learned in our program as they move to their next class. Excellent. Like waiting in excitement for the word cloud, yeah. Or the word, the cloud. Yes, please, if you can continue, we can also kind of flip back and forth between, but I love what I'm seeing here around relationships. That word is popping up a lot. I'm hearing, seeing folks saying that they're really proud of, yeah, just sharing your excitement, keeping, making STEM and other topics like accessible for all students. And certainly that forming relationships with youth. That was by far, my favorite thing about teaching. It was my favorite thing about working as an after-school educator, was those relationships. And now I'm a teacher of teachers or a teacher trainer. So I don't have those interactions during the school day like I used to, but I see that more. I do a lot of coaching of various sports outside of here. And I think that's something that that's something I truly value, is those relationships. And in my case, the sharing the content is more about baseball or soccer or other things, but something I'm really excited about. All right, let's see if we can do, maybe we can go to the next one. Let's see here. If we scroll. All right, there should be the next page. I don't know if anybody can get to it. I'll get better at this. Let's see. Let's go page 2. So one thing I'd love to know is, what is a STEM activity you've tried with youth? It's always interesting to hear. It sounds like we have a range of folks in terms of age groups here. So I'd love to hear just like, what's a STEM activity or a STEAM activity you've tried with youth? And feel free to grab sticky notes, shapes, and just throw them up there. Oh, it's so many. I love it. Build a boat using random supplies. I like that. Also a survivalist tactic. And this can be anything. And so I know some folks do. It could be science activity. It could be anything with math, science, engineering, art, if you're doing STEAM. Exploding baggie. I might need to know more about this. I'll also say if anybody prefers to share verbally, we have such a small group, you are welcome to do that as well if you want to come off mute. Do love the boat and the pennies for sure. Okay, I see heart pump model. Solo biology. That was always my favorite thing to teach, was anatomy and physiology, and doing intestinal models. All right. So I think, let's see here. I'm going to try to go back. Thank you for putting that on there. Feel free. I'm going to try to close this. I know the exploding baggie. Somebody is the person who wrote that. Are you willing to share that? A little bit about exploding baggie?
Sure. That's me.
Sorry for putting you on the spot.
I was a chemistry teacher and still am a chemistry nerd. But what it's really simple is you give each student a baggie, you give them some vinegar and some baking soda, and they have to determine the correct or the perfect ratio to expand their bag to the point where it does not explode. And then they have to figure out which they need to add more of, either vinegar or baking soda, to get the bag to pop open.
Love it. And did you do this outside or in a science lab or?
No, we should have done it outside, but we just did it. Just did it at tables.
At a program. Awesome. I love it. Yeah, I feel like good science and good engineering is I think often messy. So I love that. Sweet. Well, thank you so much. Clearly there's a range, and I know folks have done all kinds of different things. And we'll talk a little bit more about that. So I want to just kind of get on the same page because we're going to be talking about technology, talking about engineers. I just kind of want to get on the same page in terms of sort of how we define it. So one of the things, and if you've done any of the EIE workshops ever in the past or anything, I guess, related to engineering, in technology, you may have seen something like this, but we have an object on the screen. Typically, I like to do this in person with real objects, but we're all in our spaces. So we have, I think you can tell that's a pencil. So what I'd love to know is, and you can feel free to use the chat, or you can come off and just verbally share if that's easier or better. But I'd love to just say, just think about we're thinking about technology around us, so this object, is it natural? Is it human made? What is it made of? What does the object do, or what problem does it solve? And just wanted to see if love one or more people to just kind of quickly share out. What is this? And yes, we usually do this with students, but we also do this with our adults. What do you think? Again, you can definitely just throw it in the chat. What's the deal with a pencil? Is it natural, human made? What do you use it for? What's it do? What problem does it solve?
It's human made.
Hey, good one. All right, what's a pencil made of? That was one of my favorite videos. Made of wood, okay. It was one of my favorite videos on, I think it was Sesame Street or something similar. They would show pencil factories and crayon factories. Often students are like, okay, it's used in communication. What does it do? What problem does it solve? Okay, so it could be used in communication. What else could it be used for? What problems could it solve? Especially besides the obvious. I shouldn't say obvious, but the usual. Besides writing or doing homework, math problems, what else could you use a pencil for? Used to draw? Absolutely.
Used to measure things, like put.
Yes. Used to measure things in a pinch. We were talking about different things. I've definitely used it to as a hair tie, something to pull my hair back, something to oh, here we go. Oh, see, we're on the same page. Putting one's hair up. Yes, you see that a lot, like kind of like put through pencils, rubber bands, different things like that. Yes, I like the measuring, especially if it's a new pencil and you know exactly how long it is. You can use it. It's some certain number of pencil lengths long. Anything you would think of students using pencils in class or after school for that maybe open a package, perfect. Yes, I use pens and pencils all the time. Any sort of like Amazon or any sort of cardboard box. Tear things open. Could also be a fun / dangerous thing to throw. All right. So made out of wood, made out of graphite. Oh yes, hold a page in the book. See, on fire. I think of all the things I use bookmarks or like as bookmarks. So yeah, it's you know, it's designed to be something that you write with and you communicate with, but it's definitely also something that can solve many, many problems when you are looking in the moment for a solution to something. Whether that is, you know, hair in your face, or whether that is propping something up, marking a page in a book, you name it, figuring it out, which we do with objects all the time. All right. So that's just the pencil, but it's a kind of an example of how we define technology. So for yes, when we're talking about technology, we define technology as anything that's designed by people to solve a problem. And we can sometimes, we certainly dive into that with students, young people. We dive into that with adults as well, like that part about it's designed by people, and you can get into really interesting conversations about, does it have to be designed by a person? Could it be designed by an animal? Could it be like a tool? But when we're actually talking, just to kind of get on the same page, when we, at least the way we define technology, is that a person or a human has designed it, and it's just anything designed to solve a problem. And so you see in these pictures, you see a couple different things here. What might be surprising either to you or what might be surprising to students, do you think, from those pictures? What's the first thing that students are probably going to say or youth are going to say?
Where is my phone?
You're like, no, I'm actually asking a question. Where's my phone? Yes. So the obvious thing, I should say the obvious thing that teachers, after school folks, like educators ask, like students ask is, well, technology, like don't you have to plug it in, right? So when I'm looking here, yes, a blender, you will probably plug in, but you know, they wouldn't, this would not be the first thing I would say. I would not say a hanger or a belt. That's not the first thing I think of when I think of technology. A pencil, these sort of everyday things that are around that aren't electronic. So yes, a cell phone like is a technology. Yes, an iPad is a technology, but it's not the only type of technology. It does solve a problem, but so does, you know, a blender, so does an iron, so does an eraser, all of those things. So we really want to get students to understand that it's anything that's designed by people to solve a problem would likely be considered a technology. Okay, so the question becomes, who do you think creates these technologies? So again, looking at this is not what most people would think of when they think of technology. This looks like something that probably would be at the back of my science classroom. Who creates these technologies? These are all examples of things that designed by humans that solve a problem or serve a purpose. So who creates those technologies? put in my chat.
Engineers.
You're gonna get the award for my participant. Engineers are the people who create these technologies. So when we're introducing it to students, this is from a not middle school, this is an elementary slide. We have different definitions that we give for the elementary school students and then middle school students, but basically it's that an engineer is a person who thoughtfully designs a process to design something to solve a problem. So it's the idea of an engineer is someone who designs technology to solve a problem. That's how we define it. So when we talk about that, so there's, many different examples and twists on this, but that's what we always come back to is they design something to solve a problem, and that something is a technology. That is the root of all of our units. I'm showing this just now. I'll show it at the end as well, and can definitely share it if you want to scan anything here. But our website that I'll be coming to in a little bit, everything is there. So if you have to hop off or we know you're busy, life is happening, work is happening. Everything, all of our resources are at yes.mos.org. So that's yes at the museumofscience.org. And specifically, you can go on there and I'll talk about the different things that are available, but there's basically elementary curricula for in-school, there's middle school curricula for in-school, and then there's enrichment curriculum. We'll talk about what that means. That's basically anything in after school, out of school time, camps, that sort of thing, are called our Yes Enrichment units. So that QR code will take you directly to that. And then all of our Yes units, you can see the other QR code, but everything is housed at yes.mos.org. So if you want to go back to any of those, I'll show you what those are. Okay, so keep talking about enrichment. That we've gone through a bunch of different name changes for what sort of that out of school spaces. We've landed at least for now on enrichment, but we just kind of want to talk about what do we mean by enrichment, because that word gets used sometimes in some spaces and not others. So we want to talk about that. So we're really meaning anything that's not sort of your formal classroom in a school. And so it could be at a school, it could be after school time, but we think about like scouting. So it could be something that kids are doing in scouting, it could be summer camps, it could be STEM classes, after school clubs, libraries. We have a lot of librarians who have been asking about materials for drop-ins on Saturdays or after school. And that's definitely something that the enrichment units or the in-school units even can work for. Probably, I'm assuming you already know the benefits of your after school programs and out of school time programs. They're huge. This is specifically says about STEM in these spaces, but I'm sure you've seen this firsthand in your work. But we know how important the benefits are. We know that improving access to STEM for all students helps students, especially those who are underrepresented in engineering careers and in engineering schools, get exposure to STEM careers, get exposure to opportunities. Again, I'm sure you know from after school, you've seen your students, you talked about your relationships. You know that the after school space is an incredible place to help build students' social emotional skills. It's an environment that's really prime for trying things out and persisting through failure. It's not something that you're graded on. It's not something that has the same feel as the school day. It's a place to build positive STEM identity and help just increase achievement. So it's a really unique space. It has challenges, obviously, but also has a ton of opportunities that I know at least I appreciated a great deal compared to sort of the restrictions on the school day when I was a teacher. One thing that's that we've learned too from the After School Alliance is that there are programs that run STEM. Certainly, there's tons of examples of great STEM programs. But one thing that research has found too is that out of the 76% of out of school programs that offered STEM, only about 30% included any form of engineering. So that was something that we've something just like interesting to note. There's great science happening, there's great math happening, but there seems to be a much smaller percentage of engineering for bunch of reasons. So I guess I'll just ask, does anybody have some thoughts on why that might be, just on your own experience even? What is hard about doing, we'll kind of open up, what's hard about doing STEM in after school? What's hard about specifically doing engineering in after school? What are some of those barriers or those roadblocks? Why not do it every day? Again, you can come off mute if you want. You can throw something in the chat. Love to hear just anything that's been a challenge.
It takes a lot of materials that some programs don't have sometimes.
Yep. It takes a lot of materials. And why, I'm gonna do a follow-up. Why might that be challenging, Katie? A lot of materials.
A lot of programs don't have a lot of materials, but they have a lot of cardboard and things like that, but maybe they don't have kind of the more expensive materials that they think they need.
Yep. Yes, that's definitely true. I spent a lot of time at a recycling center here in Boston when I worked at City Year, and in other after school programs where it was like, okay, this is what we have this week. And it was a lot of cardboard. It was a lot of like different random things. That was our budget. Our budget was like, you know, I don't know, $100 per semester or something like that, $50 per semester. So definitely materials. Anything else that's coming up? So expense, specific materials, preparation, guessing for a lot of folks. Takes time. It can take a lot of time to prep for science activities, for engineering activities, sort of depending on what you're doing. So that time and that expense. And then what about sort of, you know, and it's different with every program. Yes, there it is. Thank you. Staff don't feel trained. So kind of moving ahead there. That is definitely something we're working with summer school programs and after school programs. And we have these things called acceleration academies during school breaks. And I think something that comes up over and over in schools, but also certainly in the after school space, is that there's just not, you know, folks don't feel confident. And so I think that's something that is in general, something that happens in schools for sure as well. If somebody's not trained in like a science or something like that. But also, you know, in the after school space, you know, there's a lot of turnover, and a lot of that has to do with just the challenges in that space and sort of where people are. But a lot of folks may be younger. So I know that the core members I was working with, that was their first time for most of them teaching students or interacting with elementary and middle school and high school students. And so they, you know, didn't feel necessarily confident at all in sort of their teaching skills or their ability to do certain things. And so, you know, that was definitely something. They were younger, or it's just not their background. But I think just in general, there's just, especially in the after school space, I think there's limited professional learning opportunities. I know that's the case. Like we've been trying to get preschool teachers in to be able to access some of the free resources and feel more confident. And that can be really hard, right? Because they're literally on all day, every single day, almost of, you know, the year. So there's limited time, and that's true also for the after school space. And then just limited time and financial resources. So some of the ways that we think we can help, how can like the YES resources help is they're free. And so I can show you those. But the free curricular resources for the I should have said pre-K there. Pre-K to 8th grade programs. So that's our focus. There are great high school engineering programs we can help direct you to that really do a good job. So our focus is more of like pre-K, preschool through 8th grade. But at yes.mos.org, things that are there are everything that's free is the educator guides. So like they have the questions, and I'll show you those, the questions for the staff to ask students. So there's sample questions. It gives all of like directions about like what's the prep look like. There's videos online of how to do it. So basically there's, you know, pictures of how to do it. There's videos of how to do it. There's written descriptions. There's access to our staff when you have questions. There's student notebooks, engineering notebooks that you can print. They can also be used digitally. You can also just write it on scrap paper. We did something for a big thing for LA school district for their summer, and they had very limited resources. So we talked about you don't need to print those. You can literally ask the same thing or do it on scrap paper. There's also educator slides. So we know not every after school program obviously has access to projectors or those sort of things. So there are Google Slides that you can use, but everything's written up too. It can just be written on like a whiteboard or on flip chart or printed out for students too. It's aligned to standards. That's really important. We know for some states and after school programs. And then we also are doing monthly webinars that are free and working on a library too for training. So folks can see like, what does questioning look like? So here's this is a lot of text, but basically this is a sample of an educator guide. This is for our rescue shuttles unit. It is designed as an after school unit and it's designed for upper elementary, so 3rd to 5th grade. And basically the way it works is there's an intro activity that introduces students to the engineering design process. In this case, it's engineering a pencil case. So I'm talking about pencils again. So there's a situation, I believe it's Jasmine. She's got her stuff everywhere. So they have to do like a quick fire challenge. And it's a way to work quickly in teams to design a case for supplies using very basic materials, and it introduces them to the engineering design process. And then there are 4 more activities that are all basically, so there's 5 total activities. They're all about 45 minutes to 60 minutes, but you can shrink them or expand them as you need. And then there's optional activities. So basically they're designing these rescue shuttles, and what they are is they are basically making their own stomp rocket. So you use a stomp rocket launcher and they're made a certain size. And what students get to do is play with different variables to get their rescue shuttle with a rope to land in certain areas. So they get a chance to rescue different groups at different distances. So they're not just shooting a rocket, launching something that goes as far as possible. That is fun, but they have to use more of their, they have to just, think about different rescue distances and how things like the length of the body can impact how far it goes, how many fins it has, what it's made out of, and do that. And that's one that is a ton of fun. So the educator guide basically has a step-by-step description of what needs to be prepped and then what questions to ask. I'll say the educator guides are really, really good. I'm someone who made up a lot of science things for science club, science after school. I ran an engineering and design club, and I was making up stuff all the time, and it was not high quality because I didn't have a lot of time and I didn't have a lot of resources, especially when I first started doing this. I wish I had something like this, especially free, where I could have been like, oh, this is the question you're supposed to ask. Like, these are the questions you can ask now. Here's the slides that you can use. Here's how you prepare it. So I think it's really straightforward. If you've used the EIE stuff, it's great, and it can be overwhelming. And I think that this is much more clear cut in terms of tips and in terms of readability for an entry point for staff. You don't have to feel like you have to be an expert. It's there if you want to use it, but you certainly don't have to. There's also educator slides. These are just downloaded. You just download them and then you can flip through them. So they're Google Slides. So the educator slides are available. You also have access to everything from EIE. It does not have those slides, but just to know. There's engineering notebooks for students. So these can be printed, these can be digital, or you can just take what they do and have students verbally share or share on scrap paper if printing is a challenge, which we know it is. But these are some examples of students doing their thinking, the different grade levels on some of the different challenges as well. And then again, we talk about our engineering design process, and it looks different for different grade levels. Okay, I want to stop and see. So what I was going to do is just talk a little bit about, again, where to find the resources, and then just move into some videos and some different things. So I wanted to see if there's any questions. Is there anything that you're hoping that I can address or talk more about while you're here? So I want to make sure. So we'll dive a little more into like engineering practices and hopefully see, and we'll watch some videos as long as it's cooperative. But is there anything that you want to make sure that I cover in terms, or you have questions like about the curricula or how you access it? Anything that I should hit on before we go into that? The only thing I'll point out about this is like with the engineering design process, you can see it looks different if you're a preschooler or if you are in middle school. And that's just designed to be obviously like developmentally appropriate. So there's only 3 steps if we're talking about preschool for the engineering design process. Things that you do over and over again as you're designing something. It's a cycle. It never stops. Elementary has the ask, imagine, plan, create, test, and improve. And then it just has, it's a little more broken out for middle school. And we use the much fancier word iterate instead of improve, but same ideas. So things just to know about YES. The YES approach basically is we have a couple of different areas that we try to hit in the curricula. And those are socially engaged engineering. Talk about what that is. Making sure students are doing engineering practices that are authentic. Thinking about like how we are sharing information with students, how we are taking their prior knowledge. Students come with a ton of knowledge, obviously, and a ton of experiences. And so making sure that we are giving them the chance to share those, and that we're also making sure that they're getting the supports that they need. So whether that's glossaries, vocabulary words, sentence stems, those kind of things, making sure all students have access to it, because you talking about engineering is a whole different language. And then the idea is that that builds students' engineering identity over time, so that if they're doing these 3 things in the units and just in terms of, you know, what you're doing every day, that helps build their identity as an engineer. So let's see if this is going to cooperate. Okay. And Katie, can you let me know if it is not cooperating when I hit play? All right, so this should be 2 students. There should be some subtitles here, but they are working, I believe, on a pencil case. So I think this is the intro lesson for some of the out of school things, but I just would love you to just watch and see what you notice in terms of the materials that students are using, kind of how they're talking to each other as they're working together.
I was thinking like,
Is that okay, Katie, volume wise? Yeah.
Le dejamos un hueco para que podamos poner lápices. Y le ponemos como y al final le ponemos tape y dejamos un
That's your
hueco.
exit ticket. I'm looking at you. I'm gonna collect your packet and I'm gonna look at your design. So it better be a design on your page. That's your exit ticket. I'm collecting your packet and I'm looking at your design. This is your exit ticket out of class. I'm collecting your packets and I'm looking at your design. Your design on your page. This is your exit ticket. I don't know why you're pulling yours up.
Okay. So what I'd love to know is, so those are 2 students who are in one of the schools that was doing some of the piloting. They're speaking to each other in, well, yeah, they're speaking to each other in Spanish. So what did you notice in the subtitles and what just sort of their actions? What were they, yeah, what were some of the actions that you noticed or things that they were doing as they were interacting with each other? So how are they doing engineering practices? How are they acting like engineers in this activity? What did they try out? You can literally put phrases in the chat if you don't want to go on screen. What did they do? How were they working together?
I was gonna say, I think an engineering instructor is really good at wait time.
I was not, but yes. No, I'm just like, I'm thinking back. I was teaching core member, not teaching, I was helping train our tutors during COVID, and that was a thing, right? So like, I think, yeah, I was not great at wait time as an educator, and still am not typically, but yes, I think teacher wise or like program wise, that's definitely really important. Well, I think one thing that's really important is, sort of, and every program is different, every setting is different. But so in this case, you can obviously hear the educator behind them giving instructions. So they're engaged, they're talking together, right? So they're using their home language, they're talking to each other, and they're spending a lot of time like physically manipulating the materials, right? So they don't even have, like right now, they're just literally using their handouts. So that's the comic that explains sort of like the situation where there's a student and she has supplies everywhere and she needs something to keep her pencils and erasers and everything because they're coming all out of her bag. So they're actually manipulating the paper in front of them. That's not even a part of the challenge. And they're folding it in different ways and holding it in different ways and testing it with their pencil. So they're communicating with each other. They are innovating on their design. So one student had an idea and then the other student asked to see it and then tries to tweak it. And so they're thinking about their plan. And then it's harder to tell in this, but they are also reacting to the criteria. So they have certain materials that are written down in their engineering notebook that they're allowed to use. So right now they're working on their plan, and I think they only have like 3 sheets of paper, and it has to fit the jumbo straw. So it has to be a certain size and fit a certain number of items. And they have, a certain amount of tape, and they have a certain amount of like manila folder, but they have really limited materials. So they have to keep that in mind. It has to be a certain size. Okay. Let's see. So engineering practices. This is something that for yes, we talk about making sure the students are doing authentic engineering practices. So they won't be able to do everything in every lesson, but ideas over time with engaging in engineering, that they would be doing these things in a real way. So 16 is a lot, and other organizations, other things may have less, may have slightly different ones, but they're very similar in terms of their wording and what that students are asked to do. So they are asked to work in engineering practices, working effectively on teams, communicating effectively, envisioning multiple solutions, innovating, balancing your criteria and constraints, constructing models, using evidence, all those things. So we're going to sort of dive into like some examples of that that you can use and will use in your program. So criteria, when we say that, just mean requirements the design must meet. And constraints are limits that restrict the design. So our constraints depends on the challenge. A lot of times they're financial. So there might be a cost to the number of materials that you have, or a certain limitation to those number of materials. You can only use blank number. That's helps push creativity, and it's also realistic, right? Like we have pretty tight budgets, but also it's just, that's the real world, right? Like we want to, you have limited budgets, right? And that budget can change really quickly. And so making sure that we're keeping the constraints in mind and that it's meeting the criteria of what it's supposed to do. So one of these, another one that you can do in the out of school or after school is, this is another upper elementary one besides rescue shuttles, and it's called, we call it SOC aids, or engineering SOC assistive devices. And basically the problem is in the comic, it's introduced with a comic, and the student has, I think injured her leg, and she's at home and her foot is getting cold, but she can't reach her foot to put her sock on. So she is trying to work with friends to design a sock device or sock aid to help people put on their socks. So in the real world, this is something that often comes up with folks who either have limited mobility or, a temporary limitation. Maybe there's a hip injury or some sort of a knee injury, and they have medical devices that can help them aid with dressing and different things like that. So in this case, the criteria are given to students, and some of the challenges they have to make them up themselves. But in this case, for the 3rd to 5th graders, their sock aid needs to hold the sock open. They need to pull the sock over the foot, and it needs to let go of the sock. All right. So the idea is that they can't reach down and put it on. So it has to be able to reach. And there are very limited supplies. There's like dowel, there's wooden dowels, there's paper clips, there's clothespins, there's some rubber bands, but it is not extensive. And then the constraints are they can only reach as far as their knee, and they have to use the materials provided. So that's one where that's already written in, and at other times, students will make up, they'll be asked to like define their own criteria. So here are some examples of student design. So it's pretty wide open. So within what they actually innovate or they design, it's pretty wide open. So you can see some examples here. Some folks are using the cup. This looks like the real deal. I realized after I started looking at sock aids, but they can come up with all kinds of different things and do. As far as doing that. So those are some examples of like what students created from binder clips and string and various other things. And that's something that in general, we want to make sure that students, even when they have the same criteria and the same constraints, they come up with multiple solutions. So it very rarely looks the same. I mean, engineers do share ideas. So when students are worried about copying and that sort of thing, we talk about how important it is that engineers share ideas and they work together and they improve on each other's designs. And there's many ways to solve the problem. So examples here, believe, oh yeah, that's the pencil cases. So what we have here is some of the rescue shuttles that students designed with different numbers of fins, different number of materials. What we have over here, those look like flip-flops. Those are slippers. That's part of the middle school unit called eco-friendly slippers, where students are basically finding ways they learn about synthetic and natural materials and the problem of fast fashion. And they actually get to design slippers that have traction, but then also use natural materials or materials that can easily be recycled. As well. And then I think the other ones, that might be pencil cases, if I'm looking at that correctly. I should know. A big one that with an engineering practice that is super, super important, and we think especially in after school, it's a space where students can persist and learn from failure. And that is true in engineering. That is also true in all of the things that happen in after school. It's sometimes a safer space to do that than in school for a lot of students because it feels different. It is different. These are just some quotes from students about basically the idea of like we learn from our mistakes. We are engineers that learn from our mistakes. Engineers fail a lot and learn from their mistakes. We talk about flip the failure. That's the phrase that we use in the elementary and middle school curricula. It's the idea that the design is going to fail. Parts of the design are going to fail. That's going to happen all the time. And what you have to do is figure out like what part failed or what part didn't work the way you wanted it to, and how do you go back and redesign that part. And that's just normal. That's how it's done. That improved step is huge. And then I think getting to the point, and for some students, this is easier than others. As I'm sure you know, it's easier for some students to sit with something that didn't work or something that didn't work the first time, didn't work the second time, but it can be really challenging. Is there anything that anyone wants to add? That's a big topic in terms of engineering, but just in general, anything that folks would like to add, or that's, I don't know, I guess, how do you deal with the failure in terms of students getting frustrated with something? Is there anything that your program does? Is there anything that you do personally that helps students kind of get more comfortable with it? Oh, and thank you, Daria. Oh, Homework Help Center. You might know something about this. So is it Daria? So what do you do? This is a big thing. Students getting really upset. My oldest son, my 9-year-old, is pretty different from his brother, who's younger, but he does not like to fail in anything. He's a perfectionist and has a really hard time with that. His younger brother's a younger brother. I don't know. He's 6. He loves to like just grab things and try it. And when people tell him it's not going to work, he just tries again.
One of the things, glad that you asked, I appreciate it.
Absolutely.
I'm out here with my mom. She's in a hospital, and I didn't want to miss the workshop. So
thank you.
But one of the things I do, I don't use the word failure. I use the word challenge. There's no such thing as can't. There's no such thing as can't. There's no such thing as failure. I can't do it. It's a failure. Would you say? And then the rest of the kids know that, so they look around and go, "Oh, it's a failure. There's no such thing. Challenge. You had a challenge. Everybody is a star. Everybody is smart, talented,
Mhm.
awesome, and respected. So there's no such thing as failure, but you have a challenge and you meet that challenge over and over again until you defeat that challenge. So the kids don't feel so bad doing it 4, 5, 6 times. And then when they do get it, it's like, Mysteria, I got it. You know, it's in between the getting it and
Yeah.
not getting it that makes them feel so bad. We got to deal with the in between. And so many times it's the choice of words that we use. We use a bad choice of words and it stays with the students. They get enough of that in school. They don't need that in after school programs. They don't need that. We have to be so intentional with the wording that we use that it's not like we're mimicking what they get in their classroom.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
You're
And thank
welcome,
you
baby.
for thank you for being here with everything. And I hope things go better soon. That's so important. Yeah, I think you said it eloquently and said it, but yeah, everything. I'm just excellent. Thank you. All right, so normalizing it. So let's see if this will work. But some students talking about it, and I will say the first thing I just want to say is we know it's not easy. I certainly haven't figured it out with my own child. I certainly haven't figured it out, and I think every child is different. Every student is different. And figuring out ways to normalize it as humans. That there's going to be challenges, that there's going to be setbacks, that there's going to be things that did not work yet. Is really, really important. So let's see, I think we have 2 students here. They are doing, I believe this is magnetic dog doors. So this is an in-school engineering activity, but it can be used in after school. So that's something really important to just share is, yes, we have things that are called enrichment curricula that's designed for out of school, but teachers use it all the time because it's shorter lessons, has a little less science content than some of the in-school lessons, but you don't need to know any science content to lead students, facilitate this with students. So this is called magnetic dog doors. It's designed as a 3rd grade unit or an upper elementary unit. And students are designing, they're presented with the challenge or the problem of there is a shelter for dogs. It's set in Puerto Rico, but there's a shelter for dogs. And it's a great facility. And they want the dogs to be able to go in and out of their kennels. But they're having a problem with rats also coming into the kennels and eating the dog food. So they are tasked with designing some sort of a door that allows dogs in, but not the rats. And so they come to it, the idea of they are going to be using magnets. So it's focused on magnets and attraction and repulsion to design these magnetic dog doors. So they're working with their model of the magnetic dog door.
First, we failed a lot, but we learned from failing. So first we had this magnet right here on this side, and we couldn't get it open because it was too strong. And we were like, what will work? And we saw some other groups, we were like, that kind of gave us inspiration. So we were like, okay, let's try that. And it really worked. Even when we failed, we never gave up and we kept trying. And I'm just proud that we are engineers now and we know a lot of stuff. I'm most proud of it actually worked and we failed and we actually did it again and never learned from our mistakes.
So I realize that not every student is going to phrase it like that.
First,
but I think one thing that's good, they mentioned a couple different things. They certainly mentioned we learned from other groups. We got inspiration from other groups, and that's something we really try to stress. Students, humans in general, can be, not every student, but there's a lot of competition, especially when we think about engineering challenges or design challenges. There's sort of this automatic assumption that has to be a competition of the furthest, the highest, this sort of thing. And we really try to stress that engineers, at least certainly ones that work in the same company or the same place, work together. They get inspiration from each other, they share ideas and they improve upon each other's ideas and they really work together. And that when something isn't working the first time, that there are ways to improve it and that you can get ideas from your teammates and from other people and incorporate those. And so definitely could be something is something super helpful. And again, that is a process. We know that it's not going to be automatic, and it's for some students, it's going to be, and humans, it's a longer road, and it's little wins over and over and over again to help kind of build that confidence that it is a challenge. All right. So when we talk about, other things, so every single curricula piece has some sort of socially engaged engineering. So there's always a problem that students are addressing. It's something, yeah, so it's some sort of a problem, some sort of a challenge that they can relate to or hopefully will care about. And so that looks different depending on sort of the age group. Introduce the problem. If it's lower elementary, it's introduced basically as graphics in a short story on slides or that can be read aloud. If it's elementary, it's a comic that has a couple different chapters that introduces the problem. In this case, students are designing, on the right-hand side, they're designing, it's after rescue shuttle, but they're designing a waterproof bag. There's a person who has lost their medications and lost their important items in a flood. And so they're designing a waterproof bag, and it goes with the engineering rescue shuttles. And so that's how it's introduced as in a comic. And then in middle school, the problem is introduced with a video. So there's a video of someone talking about the situation, a real life scientist or someone else kind of introducing it. It looks different if you're very lower elementary or middle school. At lower elementary, you know, the early grades, we're just really trying to introduce, we're really trying to get kids to think about, which is hard, somebody other than themselves. So thinking about their needs and what are the needs of one other person or another user. So in this case, so in one case, they're designing a nightlight here. And one student in the story wants it to be their cousin is coming over, I believe, and one is scared of the dark and one wants it to be really dark. So they design a nightlight that has two lights so that it fits both of their needs. In kindergarten, they're designing a sun hat that meets the needs of their needs as far as what they would need to be covered and their partners who might have a different hairstyle, who might have different preferences. And then in elementary school, upper elementary, they're thinking about how do I, who's most impacted by the problem and how do I reduce the harm for them? And then in middle school, they have to think about trade-offs. Sometimes I design something and sometimes I design something and there's an unintended consequence, or I have to decide sort of, make a decision that is going to differently impact people.
So I chose this one because it's the lightest, but we can still use both because if the person isn't that scared of the dark anymore, they could flip it upside down so the light is here and then it'll just shine here. But if they're really scared of the dark, they can go it like that and then it'll be like that.
And it'll be like that. Yeah, so that was the nightlight. So the students describing their model and sort of they learn about light and transparency and different things as they design it. And then sometimes the context, right, doesn't necessarily fit where students are living. So this is an example from an after-school program in Puerto Rico that did the rescue shuttles. And I believe in this, they're getting familiar with the context, the situation. And talking about sort of how might something similar or not similar have happened in their lives. So thinking about how do they bring in their own experiences to the engineering activity.
No, this case, by the way, this happened a lot in the Hurricane Maria, happened a lot because especially near us, remember the flood of the Rio Añasco? Remember the river? That a lot of neighborhoods, their water went so tall as more than 8 feet.
Teacher, mi mamá me dijo que los vecinos, we were in the house, we were in my dad's house, en la casa de mi papá. So, but los vecinos de nosotros, they told us que la mamá estaba en una llamada y el nene estaba jugando, el nene estaba recogiendo todo lo que estaba afuera y después él mira algo y hay una ola gigante, más grande que la casa de ellos, y él grita a una ola y ellos salen ahí y le ven y habían, creo que había.
They were rescuers were trying to cut them.
All right. So again, we'll see another clip from this, but this is an after-school program in Puerto Rico that piloted some of tested out some of our after-school units and provided feedback. But you can see in that clip that they're reading the comic that goes with it, that sets the context for the engineering challenge. So they're learning about like this flooding and that people have to be rescued. They have to do water rescues. And so they are designing basically something that can get the rope closer to people who need to be rescued. So they have to design to rescue somebody who is closer, sort of a medium distance and a far distance, and use their variables. But in this case, you can see that students are connecting with this story. They're sharing their own experiences or neighbors' experiences. So they're connecting, something that may have happened to them or something they've heard about with the story and trying to make those connections, which helps students be more invested and more engaged. All right, so hopefully if we're doing engineering practices and we are having students connect to a problem that they want to solve, and we are providing them with different ways to show what they're learning, create their design, so drawing, writing, talking to their partner, kind of introducing them to that. Hopefully, the idea is that over time that can help students' confidence and help them feel more like an engineer. And we're going to see the same classroom, and the educator is talking about a student that didn't feel that way, and how some positive things happened over the course of the unit. Hopefully this will work.
He is a student who struggled a lot with English since pre-K. Seeing him reading English confidently, helping and everything, and seeing him so happy because his shuttle went through this, and seeing that he created something that it went perfectly, he was super excited about it. After that shuttle, the next day he was more confident in what he was doing.
What did you really like about the rescue shuttles or the cohetes?
Everything.
Everything. Tell me more. Tell me more about what does everything mean.
I like
All the things.
I like to work. I think I'm gonna be un ingeniero because I like all of the things que tienen que ver con electricidad, con cosas que dan vueltas, cosas que prenden como las luces. A mí me encanta todo lo que tiene que ver con ingeniero.
Okay, so you like the engineering aspect of it, and you think about other areas of engineering.
Yeah, I like airplanes.
You like airplanes? You said you like something about electricity, electrical engineering. Do you think you want to do this type of activity again?
Yes.
Yes?
Totally yes.
And why?
Because it was super cool. I love engineering. I like to be like different things every day. I want to meet new people. I like to prove new things. I like to saber más ingeniería, sobre ingeniería todos los días.
Yeah.
Yo me levanto y digo, ay, ojalá que aprendamos algo nuevo en ciencia.
So that was one of the students in this after school program that was working on the rescue shuttles. And, even in that clip, hopefully, I think was something that's something that and you see every day. You know how valuable after school programming is. And I think this came up and was shared is the idea that, school can be a very different place, and sometimes students can feel very successful in school settings and sometimes they don't. And there is a huge opportunity in after school programming and out of school time programming where students can really have a chance to build not only their engineering identity, but their social and emotional skills and their confidence and just all, so many academic and social and emotional skills. And it's just a great place. I'm biased, but I think it's a really great place where you can do STEM, and it's a really great place where you can do engineering. And so I said that this was going to be a little bit about engineering mindset. When we talk about engineering mindset, it's kind of the idea of like, if you're doing engineering practices over and over and you're becoming, you do these behaviors and you engage with these engineering practices over and over and over again, that along with your values and thinking about how technology impacts people and how your design might impact people, and sort of taking all of those things together can help create a mindset or an engineering mindset. So some people consider these different things, like engineering practices and an engineering mindset. Basically, they get used interchangeably. So if you know, hear those, it's basically the idea of like, what are students doing that are similar to what engineers do, that are similar to what folks who are functioning well in groups do together and being creative, and that over time doing those things and having that mindset of trying and trying again and improving upon something and working together to do it. That is kind of what we're talking about. That is what we're talking about. We're talking about an engineering mindset. So I wanted to show, I think we're pretty close on this. This is just to kind of show a video from a classroom. This is a little older. It's it's a lesson from the Engineering is Elementary. This is also available on the website. It's from our windmills unit, and they basically are learning about sails. And how a sail can catch the wind, in this case from a fan, and move this raft along a track. And it's younger elementary. Just like you to watch this and just think about, you know, what are some ways that the students in this video, what are some of the engineering practices or the engineering skills that they're practicing that can lead to a mindset of I'm an engineer and I can do engineering. What do you see here? Nope. Yeah.
Let's see what happens. So what do you think? Is it moving? Yeah. Is our boat moving? No. Our boat's not moving. When you redesign this, what do you need? What do you need to change about the sail?
The video's not moving. I'm not sure why.
Oh shoot! I'm sorry.
It needs to be stiffer.
Thank you. It's not. It's probably the connection. All right.
Yeah,
I'm like watching it over here, having a good time. Thank
We
you.
can still hear it though. We can hear it.
Oh, yeah, it's going through SharePoint. That's probably a thing. So fun with tech, which I'm sure you're experienced. I guess what I would like to, I think we've seen a bunch of different videos of students practicing these things. So what we can do is just kind of move past this and let's see. Let's see if I get out of here. Give that a look. I don't shut the whole thing. All right. Sorry. I'm going to stop the share and I'm going to restart. So we'll bring it home. Appreciate your patience.
Engineering challenge in action.
Oh, what's been an engineering challenge? Let's see. Here, let's go here. Okay. Let's not see what happens. Okay. All right. So we'll kind of jam them all together. So basically, like I said, some people call this, when we talk about STEM, we talk about engineering specifically. Some folks will talk about engineering mindset. Some folks will talk about engineering practices. But basically, it's the things that youth are doing. What are the actual actions that they're taking and the things that they're doing in these activities and in these units that are similar to what an engineer does. And, you know, if you do them over time, like the idea is they can contribute to an engineering mindset, which I would argue is a really good mindset in general in terms of, I know growth mindset can get overused, but it's really that idea of it's right. It's like, I might not be successful yet, but this design can be improved, you know, and sort of just that idea of like trying and trying again, and exploring and being curious and those sort of things. So this is from, I think it's the Million Girls Moonshot, and they had 10 practices. We talk about 16, but they're very, very, very similar. The idea that you persist and learn from failure, you work in teams, you envision multiple solutions, you explore materials. You do that early in all of the lessons where you get to explore the properties of materials and use that in your design. And so hopefully you saw some examples of that. So what I'd love to go to is one of those skills, one of those engineering practices, and sort of this mindset is that you can work effectively in teams. That is important for engineering. That is important for life. And so I think I'm not even going to go to the whiteboard right now, I don't think, but maybe you could use the chat. I'd love to just hear about working effectively in teams is one of the hardest things I would argue to do, whether it's after school or in school. So I'd just love to hear from you, just any tips. You are welcome to share verbally and come off mute or share. We'll use the chat for this. what do you do? Like, how do you help your students work effectively in teams? What do you do when one youth dominates the conversation and everything that's happening? How do you assign roles? Like, what other strategies do you use to support group work? So I'd love to hear just like, you're experts, you're in this all the time, every day. What do you do? How do you help students work effectively in teams? What are some of your tips? What are some things you've tried? What are some questions that you have? So feel free to use the chat or just come off verbally. I know I could have used some advice and still can.
Well, I'm not in a program, but I'll share what I share when I'm training. I tell
In life.
programs things like, making sure that youth voice is prominent. As the adult, yes, the personalities and the little quirks and all of those, and know that what might happen if a certain group gets together, but giving them a voice and allowing them to manage the work, the group, and choose, but also giving them the tools to work through any hiccups that might happen. As far as assigning, community has to be built first. And this goes with this too. Once you build community, there might be someone in the group who they say, oh my gosh, I didn't know that about you. I really do like you. Which it could be someone who they wouldn't have wanted to join a group with, but once you build that community and they get to know each other on a deeper level, it might help them choose to be in another group. So
I love that. And you mentioned, thank you for sharing, Sheila, and you mentioned tools, like sort of the idea of giving them certain tools. What kind of tools have you recommended to folks when you're teaching or when you're training for students?
And this is, throughout all of the tools to communication tools, how do you solve a problem verbally with someone in a way that is receptive from the other person? How do you talk through things? How do you barter? Because everybody can't have their way. So how do you meet in the middle? When I say tools, I mean those, I like to call them life tools that they can use to sort of help them work their way through frustrations, just modeling for them what it might look like, acknowledging and validating that, I got to throw my SEL in there, acknowledging and validating that their feelings, are okay, but there's a way that we display those feelings. There's a way that, we work through those feelings, just giving them those tools to use, not just in the program, but in life. And I think the SEL piece of STEM is a great place to work on SEL skills, because you're doing all the things in STEM.
100%. I 100% agree. Yes, I think you've named so many things there. So yes, I appreciate that piece about the tools, like actual, it sounds like actual physical, those could be physical tools or sort of like communication tools. Yeah, I think something you hit on that is super important, that all of you know, is that idea of building community. So I think like when these kind of things break down, one of the fears that I think a lot of educators have, after school educators, teachers, is they're scared, they don't want to do the engineering or try sort of some of these activities, not just engineering, but anything that's like group related. We have folks that'll be like, well, can't they just do it independently? Or how about they just work by themselves, And I think something we bring up is, this is this is the thing. This is the practice. But you also, knowing the right time to do it with your group. Have you built community? This is a way to build community, but like you have to have certain structures in place, because if you're not haven't built any sort of relationships with the students haven't built relationships with each other, it's gonna be hard to do anything. So
and then embracing the youth that wants to dominate, because dominating doesn't necessarily indicate, sometimes you think of it as annoying, but you have a youth who has the skill set and the desire to lead. So taking that youth who wants to dominate and, you know, sort of flipping it, building leadership skills with something that could be annoying and something that could be annoying and something that could isolate other youth, helping that youth take that need, want, desire to dominate, which to me is, you know, you've got, like, I'm usually the person, if I walk in the room, I'm just going to start talking and da, 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 da. It's not that I'm gonna dominate, but if nobody else is doing it, it's like, why not? So how can they use that to their advantage? You know, how can they take that skill set and grow it in a way that is socially acceptable and that works, you know, within the group. So
love it. And I also am reading this as like reading this and I'm like, that is not, I think dominates can be a very like negative connotation when we like write that word or think about that word. So I think thinking about the idea of like, that's not the most asset-based language there, but like the idea of like youth leading, right? Like, so how do you manage it when one student or several students are taking the lead? And I think something interesting too, right, is it may not be that's, you know, in the after school space, right? It you know, it may not be a student who leads typically during the school day. So keeping that in mind too is like embracing that as well. I think all of those things I love that take. All right, let's see if we can get forward. Anything else that anybody has found that is helpful that you think you could bring into this space? I know we are always I try to figure it out with adults. I try to figure it out with kids. Like, anything else that you feel like you want to throw in the mix before we move on?
And heck, we know as adults, it's hard working in teams, even as adults.
It's hard working in teams.
Woo, when you get put on that project with your coworkers and it's like, ooh, I have been just totally blessed, lucky that I have had the best coworkers for over 10 years now in every position I've had. So it's worked, but there have been times throughout the years where you get that one person and it's like, okay, this is not going to work. So
I like how you called it life skills, because it is real. And I'm thinking even of this past week in myself and some of those communication tools. So all right. So again, just thinking about this, you know, the wording may be different, whether it comes from YES or it comes from any other organization, but the idea is there's when we talk about engineering practices and that leading to an engineering mindset, there's a lot of similarities there. And a lot of that is things that are life skills too, right? Like making sure you're thinking about trade-offs, envisioning multiple solutions, persisting and learning from setbacks or challenges, working effectively in teams, using data, using an approach, a systematic approach to dealing with something. These are all really, really, really important life skills too. So I kind of want to just like open it up before I go back to our little QR code and stuff. Just kind of curious, what do you think? Which type of engineering practices or sort of engineering mindsets do you think are most important for your youth or the youth that your staff works with to develop? And I can go back to that, you know, there's many different lists, or you can make up your own. And how might you include more opportunities for youth to engage in it? An engineering mindset or sort of this mindset in general. And I'll go back to that. So I guess just, you know, what are you thinking about? It's probably a lot of slides here, but yeah, I guess which of these skills do you think is most important for your youth to kind of, you know, when you're working with youth or your staff's working with youth, and how might you kind of focus more on that? Is anybody willing to share their thinking?
I think just with our work, because we do a lot of work with programs in Vermont, and we do a lot of these kind of exact programs because we use you all. The identifying as engineers is one that providers don't really think about as much. And I think identifying as an engineer is actually really important when it comes to youth, because they need to see themselves doing this kind of work and with career awareness and with kind of confidence building. And so there was one clip you showed where they were like, we're engineers. And it was, I think one of the things that really important for programs to do is instill like you are thinking like an engineer, you're being an engineer. And that gets them thinking like, oh, yeah, I am. Like this is engineering. And so it gets them able to do that. And I think one of the ways incorporating that is like I love when kids are drawing pictures of what an engineer looks like. And shift the mindset of like an old white guy. And so really trying to get them thinking like you're being an engineer, you could be an engineer. This is something you could do to get rid of the stigma of kind of the nerdy engineer, which has been really powerful in a lot of programs.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. Yeah, that's the one that, I think some of these are much more concrete to see. Like there are things you can see built in, like, oh, you're actually exploring the properties of these materials in this lesson. But like that idea of like identify as an engineer, it's not something that's just going to like poof, oh, we did it. We did that activity. Now you're an engineer. But I think builds over time. And I think referring to students as engineers, them referring to themselves as engineers, constantly thinking about like, what you're doing is what engineers do, can help build that. And I think there's, more subtle things too, that are built in, I think, to all of the curricula that we have, whether it's the newer curriculum, the YES stuff, or the EIE, and it's the idea of students seeing scientists and seeing engineers, that, from just all different backgrounds, right? So it's not just, your Albert Einstein that, certainly a lot of my kids would draw, when I was teaching, and still do. But that's a nice change. That's an important change to see. So I think just in terms of the videos, the career focus, there's also a lot of career focused videos that are with different scientists and engineers, and just making sure students can see like who is an engineer is really, really, really diverse. Across all of the different factors, and that anyone can be, and it's just kind of opening that up. All right. So just wanted to share, and I'll share some of the slides. So just so you can see kind of what the slides look like. So when we're talking about some of the slides, this is just from one of the intro lessons in the elementary school. So these are just some examples of some of the different slides. Again, they're all there, but I want to just share these before we wrap up. Again, everything, I know some folks came in, were able to come in a little bit later. So the curricula that is free, if you go to yes.mos.org, and you can definitely use these QR codes. One, the enrichment units are designed for out of school time or after school. There's 5 lessons. There's it's shorter than the in-school ones in terms of the number of lessons. There's also alternative lessons, a little less science content. But you can certainly use the enrichment units or the in-school units. There's if you scan or go on the website, you can see all the yes units. You can find in-school elementary, in-school middle school, and those can absolutely and are used in the out-of-school time space, the after-school space. We have like Science Club for Girls and some of the different, a lot of different organizations, Girls Inc., using those in-school lessons for middle school. There's also a ton of stuff in there that's from engineering as elementary. Again, all the curricula is free. All of the slides, all of that information is free. There is an opportunity. There's also lists of everything you need, very specific lists. You can also, if you have funding, which we know is hard, but if you do have funding or a grant of some sort, there's also the opportunity to purchase kits. What's good about that is if you're able to purchase them, we get them from another supplier. Everything's in one place, so you don't have to go track it down. But if that's not a possibility, and it's less expensive to collect it or utilize other things, that's on there as well, as an option. And if you want to contact me, this is my email. This is also Customer Success's email. They're fabulous. So if you have questions, if you can't find something, you can contact me directly. Also, this Customer Success email is on the website at the bottom. You can contact there as well. Yeah, so I wanted to share that. And we're almost at time, but just wanted to see if anybody has any questions or any questions about the curricula, any questions about sort of anything that we hit on, or any comments you want to share.
Oh, looks like there is one in the chat.
Let's see.
Can I see the arcades again?
The QR codes?
Yeah. Oh, good job. Good
Good,
job.
good doggone autocorrect will get you every time.
Love it. Yes. And if they don't work or like they're taking you to the wrong place, yeah, if you go to yes.mos.org, you can pull down curriculum and it'll pull down all the different options. There's also computer science. So there's engineering, there's computer science, there's all kinds of stuff there. But if you have any, yeah, you
I'll
can
drop
contact
the
me directly.
Actual link in the chat too. That might help.
Well, that would probably help too, huh? Let's do that.
Great.
Oh.
Thanks, Carrie.
Absolutely. Oh, thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Sheila. Yeah, if you have any problem. Thank you all for, thank you. Yeah, thank you for being here. We really, thank you, Katie, and thank you, thank you, Ready STEM Go. And yeah, if anybody has questions, I know we'd love to work with you. We just want more kids doing engineering, especially in after school, because you all do such great work and have such amazing access to kids. So yeah.
Thank you, Carrie. That was wonderful.
All right.
This
Thank
is our
you.
last session of Ready STEM Go. So thank you all so
Whoa.
much for joining. There will be a follow-up email where you will get a nice feedback survey on the whole conference so we can make Ready STEM Go 4 even better for next year. And you will also find kind of where all the recordings from all the sessions are going to be. They are going to be in the lobby, but you get an email talking about it. And there actually is a resource in Carrie's session. If you go back to the lobby, there's a handout in there if you'd like to download that. That also gives you some information about all of this great stuff. So thank you so much, Carrie. This was great. And thank you all for attending the conference. And look for that follow-up email and go through all the great yes stuff. So thank you all. And have a great rest of your day. Thank you, Carrie.
Awesome. Thank you, Katie. Thank you, everybody.
Bye.